So I need to talk to you all, like, for real. I totally understand that you guys want Breath of the Wild 2, like, now. I get it. I really do, and so do I. But I think that we need to take a step back and realize just how crucial it is that Nintendo takes their time on the sequel to Breath of the Wild, and just how challenging it is as a developer of a series that is loved as much as the Zelda series to get things right this time around with the process of creating the sequel. In this week's video, I'd like to talk about why I believe developing this sequel is going to be an insane challenge for Nintendo. You ready? Let's go. Hey, what's up? It's Derek with Zelda Theory, bringing you brand new Zelda content every single week. And on this channel, sometimes I do countdown videos as well as videos all about the upcoming sequel to Breath of the Wild. So if you're new here, consider subscribing and hitting the bell for any and all things Zelda. I'd be honored to have you here. Also, real quick, I would like to give a massive shout out to my graphic designers, Sectator Gaming and Raylu, for the creation of my logo and all of my channel branding. If you're looking for high quality graphics or logos, be sure to check them out. Ways to get a hold of them will be listed and linked in the description below, as well as links to other Zelda videos on this channel you might enjoy. So it is without question, and I think everyone here can agree, that The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is easily one of the most successful Zelda games in the franchise's 35-year history, giving its vast open world environment, immersive story, and intuitive gameplay. Breath of the Wild even helped Nintendo sell its initial batch of consoles from the Switch, and introduced The Legend of Zelda to an insane amount of new players who have never actually heard of the iconic video game series. I don't even understand how this is a thing, to be honest. Believe it or not, I still run into people that have never actually played Zelda. It blows my mind. Anyways, back to the topic at hand. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 is on the way, and fans are patiently waiting with anxious desire on how the sequel will turn out and whether it will be able to surpass the success of the original. Honestly, I have no doubt that it will, as a long-term fan of the series. Given the success of the original, Nintendo now faces the insane challenge of developing a sequel that will not only surpass the success of the original, but will ensure the continuous interest of Nintendo fans with the series. Now, obviously, this challenge is nothing new, given that most sequels in most games around all genres will always be compared and try to live up to the original. But how in the world will Nintendo be able to surpass such an iconic game? How will Nintendo be able to live up to the fans' expectations? More importantly, what lessons can The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 learn from the massive success of its predecessor? For the love of God, let us control the rain, or something. Let's dive into a couple reasons why I think the sequel is going to be a little bit of a challenge for Nintendo. Now, for me personally, I think the blueprint from Breath of the Wild is just not going to work for the sequel. For those of you who don't know, Breath of the Wild's story begins when Link awakens from his 100-year slumber by having no memory of who he is and what has transpired. Link then immediately discovered that King Rhoam and the champions have died, and that Princess Zelda used her magic to trap Ganon in Hyrule Castle. How is this not dark enough? Like, this is pretty dark. It is then mentioned that Ganon is about to get free, given that Zelda's hold on him is starting to fade, but the game did not specifically specify when this will happen. This allowed players to experience the game's story without any sense of urgency, unlike previous entries in this franchise, where the threat is already imminent. Now, in Breath of the Wild, players are encouraged to explore the game's vast open world environment to prepare Link for the upcoming battle. Although the threat of Ganon's escape is only a matter of time, the game's narrative justifies the need for the player to embark on a journey first before heading straight to Hyrule Castle, given that after Link's been asleep for over a century, he has no memories, no hearts and stamina, and no trusty sword. To me, this narrative justifies the need for the player to divert Link in an adventure through Hyrule to prepare him for the final confrontation with Ganon, and to also get the Divine Beast back on their side. Now, this gave players the freedom to explore Hyrule's vast open world environment and tackle the game's main quests at their own pace, which is one of the main defining features that made Breath of the Wild a massive success at its launch. However, at the end of the first game, players were already able to bring back Link's memory and restore his previous strength and stamina, which is why Breath of the Wild 2 won't be successful if it only replicates the formula that made the first game a success. Doing this would make the sequel far too similar to its predecessor. That's just what I think. Are you following me? players will realize fairly quickly that the game is repetitive and that their actions in Breath of the Wild were pretty much useless in the sequel. So how should Nintendo approach Breath of the Wild 2 so that it would still feel familiar but not repetitive? I'm quite curious. Breath of the Wild needs to have a more straightforward story, in my opinion. Given how Breath of the Wild ended, Nintendo may be forced to develop the sequel's story and game progression in a much more linear fashion. Now, sure, the game should still have an open world map that would allow players to tackle the main objectives at their own pace, but although Breath of the Wild was owned for its prioritization of immersive open world gameplay, which sacrificed its story, the same cannot be applied to Breath of the Wild 2, and I think a lot of us can agree that the story of Breath of the Wild was indeed sacrificed because of all of the open world exploration in the game. Instead here, the sequel should employ a more story-driven narrative, in my opinion. Remember, it's a theory. Could be right, could be wrong. Which should have a sense of urgency in order for the game to feel fresh and new despite having familiar elements such as its map and dungeons. This approach also makes sense to the story given how the first game ended. Given that the threat of Ganondorf's return is literally only a matter of time, at least that's how Nintendo made it seem, it would make sense for Link and Zelda to just take their time exploring Hyrule as they did in the first game, especially now since there is an external force that would drive the narrative forward. In the end, Nintendo has a challenging task ahead of them to ensure that Breath of the Wild 2 will be a worthy successor of the 2017 game. While many loved the relaxed open world pace of Breath of the Wild, this approach will simply no longer work for the upcoming sequel. Now to see more Zelda content, click on either of the videos coming up on the screen now, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, continue to be the light in someone's life, and remember, it's dangerous to go alone. I hope to talk to all of you very soon.